What if every single push-up, every squat, every tiny movement you made turned you into an unstoppable force? Protagonist discovers the most broken power system ever created, and trust me, by the end of this story, physics becomes his personal playground. But before we jump into this absolute masterpiece, let me paint you a picture. Imagine being the weakest person in a world where strength literally determines whether you live or die. Now imagine stumbling upon a power so ridiculous that every breath you take makes you stronger. That's exactly what happens to our main character, and the journey from zero to god tier is absolutely insane. I've read hundreds of manhwa and manga over the years, and I can confidently say this one breaks every single rule about power scaling. Most stories give you gradual improvements, maybe a training montage here and there. This story, it throws logic out the window and gives us pure, unfiltered power fantasy at its finest. By the time I finished reading this, I was questioning whether the author even understands the concept of limitations. So buckle up, because we're about to explore a world where getting stronger isn't about years of training or mystical artifacts. It's about discovering that your body is essentially a walking cheat code, and every single action you perform breaks the universe just a little bit more. Our story begins in the most mundane way possible. Meet Jin Woo-sung, a 22-year-old college student who embodies everything wrong with modern society's definition of weakness. Standing at barely 5'6" with the muscle mass of a malnourished scarecrow, Jin represents every underdog protagonist you've ever rooted for, except somehow even more pathetic. Jin's daily routine consists of getting bullied at university, working part-time jobs that barely cover his ramen budget, and going to bed every night, wondering why the universe decided to make him its personal punching bag. His apartment is smaller than most people's closets. His bank account has more zeros before the decimal point than after it, and his social life is so non-existent that even his reflection seems embarrassed to look at him. But here's where things get interesting. Jin isn't just physically weak, he's living in a world that recently underwent what locals call the Great Awakening. 5 years ago, mysterious gates started appearing across the globe, unleashing monsters that would make your worst nightmares look like cute puppies. Humanity responded by developing supernatural abilities, creating a new class system where strength determines everything from your job prospects to your dating life. Everyone except Jin got powers. While his classmates are throwing fireballs and lifting cars with their minds, Jin can barely open a pickle jar without asking for help. The awakened individuals, known as hunters, live like celebrities while the powerless majority scrapes by in their shadow. Jin falls into that unfortunate category of people who are too weak to matter but too aware to ignore their own insignificance. The world has essentially become a video game where Jin is stuck at level 1 while everyone else is grinding endgame content. Hunters earn millions clearing dungeons, gain fame and recognition, and live lives that Jin can only dream about. Meanwhile, our protagonist works at a convenience store where his most exciting daily task is restocking energy drinks for actual superhumans. Jin's breaking point comes on what starts as an ordinary Tuesday morning. He's walking to work, lost in his usual thoughts about how unfair life has become, when he witnesses something that changes everything. A massive dungeon break occurs right in the middle of the city, and dozens of C-rank monsters come pouring out like a nightmare parade. Most people would run. Jin tries to run. But as he's sprinting away from what looks like a cross between a bear and a chainsaw, he trips over his own feet and tumbles down a construction site. The fall should have killed him, but instead, Jin finds himself in what appears to be an abandoned underground facility that predates the Great Awakening by decades. The facility looks like something out of a science fiction movie, with walls covered in strange symbols and technology that shouldn't exist. Jin explores deeper, driven by a combination of curiosity and the fact that going back up means facing monsters that definitely want to eat him. That's when he discovers the room that will change his life forever. In the center of this mysterious chamber sits what looks like an ancient computer terminal, still somehow functional after all these years. The screen flickers to life as Jin approaches, displaying text in multiple languages before settling on something he can actually read. The message is simple but earth-shattering. Strength amplification system activated. User compatibility 100%. Beginning integration process. Before Jin can process what's happening, the terminal shoots out tendrils of light that wrap around his body like living chains. The pain is indescribable, as if every cell in his body is being rewritten from scratch. Jin's screams echo through the empty facility as the system literally rewires his genetic code, installing what can only be described as the ultimate cheat engine directly into his DNA. When the process finally ends, Jin collapses to the floor, gasping for air and wondering if he's about to die. That's when he notices the translucent blue screen floating in front of his face, displaying information that makes his heart skip several beats. His new status window shows stats that are laughably low, but with one crucial difference. Beside each stat is a small plus sign, and at the bottom of the screen, a message that breaks every rule of power progression he's ever heard of. Strength amplification system active. All physical actions generate strength points. Current multiplier ×1. Warning: excessive stat growth may result in reality distortion. Jin stares at the screen, not quite believing what he's reading. Every push-up, every step, every tiny movement he makes will now contribute to his overall strength. It sounds too good to be true, which in most stories means it probably is. But Jin decides to test it anyway. He does a single push-up, his arms shaking from the effort because remember, he's still pathetically weak at this point. The moment his chest touches the ground and he pushes back up, the screen flashes. Strength plus 0.01. Endurance plus 0.01. The numbers are tiny, almost insulting, but they're there. Jin does another push-up. The same message appears. Then another and another, each repetition adding minuscule amounts to his stats. After 50 push-ups, which nearly kills him, Jin has gained half a point in strength and endurance. It doesn't sound like much, but he can feel the difference. His muscles, which were screaming in agony just minutes. That's when Jinigo, now feels slightly less terrible, realizes the true insanity of his new power. Most people need months or years to increase their stats by meaningful amounts. Jin just gained measurable strength in under 10 minutes of exercise. If this pattern continues, if there's no upper limit to his growth, then he's essentially been given the key to unlimited power. But the system isn't done surprising him. As Jin continues testing his abilities, he discovers that it's not just traditional exercise that grants him points. Walking gives him agility. Lifting objects, no matter how light, increases his strength. Even breathing deeply seems to provide tiny amounts to his stamina stat. Every single action his body performs is being converted into permanent power gains. The implications are staggering. While other people need to risk their lives in dungeons or undergo expensive training to improve their abilities, Jin can literally get stronger by existing. His mundane daily activities, the same routine that made him feel worthless just hours ago, have suddenly become the foundation for unlimited growth. Jin spends the next several hours in the underground facility, experimenting with different movements and watching his stats slowly climb. By the time he decides to leave, his strength has increased by 3 full points, his endurance by 4, and his agility by 2. The changes are subtle but noticeable. His steps feel lighter, his breathing comes easier, and for the first time in his adult life, Jin feels like he might actually have forward to. But as a future worth looking, Jin makes his way back to the surface. He realizes that his new power comes with complications he hadn't considered. The world above is still the same cruel hierarchy where the strong dominate the weak, and Jin is still technically powerless according to official records. If he reveals his new abilities too quickly, he'll attract attention from people who might not have his best interests at heart. The smart move would be to keep his power secret while gradually building his strength in private. Jin could spend months or even years slowly accumulating power until he's strong enough to reveal himself without fear of being exploited or eliminated by those who see him as a threat to the established order. However, Jin's decision becomes much more complicated when he emerges from the construction site to find the city in chaos. The dungeon break he was running from earlier has escalated into a full-scale disaster, with monsters rampaging through the streets. While overwhelmed, hunters struggle to contain the situation. People are dying, buildings are collapsing, and Jin finds himself standing at a crossroads that will define not just his future, but potentially the fate of everyone around him. Jin stands frozen at the edge of the construction site, watching the city burn around him. The sounds of destruction echo through the streets as C-rank monsters tear through everything in their path. He can see hunters in the distance, their colourful abilities lighting up the smoke-filled sky, but there aren't nearly enough of them to handle this scale of disaster. This is Jin's moment of truth. He could slip away quietly, disappear into the chaos and continue building his strength in secret. After all, his power has only just awakened, and he's gained maybe 10 total stat points. Against monsters that regularly require entire teams of professional hunters to defeat, he'd be nothing more than another casualty. But as Jin watches a family trapped beneath a collapsed storefront, screaming for help while a bear-like creature stalks toward them, something inside him snaps. He spent his entire life being useless, watching from the sidelines, while others took action. His new power might be weak now, but it's still power, and these people need every bit of help they can get. Jin sprints toward the trapped family, his enhanced agility making him faster than he's ever been before. The monster notices his approach and turns, revealing rows of teeth that could shred steel and claws that gleam like obsidian blades. For a split second, Jin's resolve wavers. This thing could kill him with a casual swipe. Then the system window flashes before his eyes. Combat situation detected. Strength amplification increased to ×2 during active combat scenarios. Jin's eyes widen as he realizes his power just doubled its effectiveness. Every movement he makes now will grant twice the normal stat gains, turning this life or death situation into the ultimate training opportunity. The monster charges, moving with surprising speed for something the size of a small truck. Jin barely manages to dive aside, the creature's claws missing his head by inches, and is pounding so hard he can feel system keeps flashing updates. Agged carving deep gouges into the concrete, where it in his throat, but he'd been standing. His heartility +0 incredible is happening. The Jin realizes something too. Reflexes +0.01 system isn't just tracking his physical movements anymore. It's rewarding him for every aspect of combat, from dodging attacks to maintaining his balance under pressure. His fear is literally being converted into power, each terrifying moment making him stronger than he pays again. And this time, Jin doesn't just the last. The monster SW dodge. He grabs a piece of concrete rubble and hurls it at the creature's face. The impact is pathetic, barely scratching its hide, but the system rewards him anyway. Strength +0.03, accuracy +0.01. Even his failures are making him stronger. What follows can only be described as the most ridiculous David versus Goliath fight in history. Jin spends the next 10 minutes essentially being a human pinball, bouncing off walls and rolling under claws while the monster grows increasingly frustrated with its inability to catch this annoyingly quick pest. Every near-death experience adds to Jin's stats, and he can feel himself becoming faster, stronger, and more coordinated with each passing second. The creature's attack patterns, it's not particularly real. Breakthrough comes when Jin notices intelligent, just a bundle of aggressive instincts wrapped in claws and teeth. Jin starts predicting its movements, using his steadily increasing agility to stay one step ahead while looking for an opening to help the trapped family. That opening comes when the monster overextends during a particularly vicious lunge. Jin slides between its legs and reaches the collapsed storefront where the family is trapped. The father has a broken leg, the mother is unconscious, and their young daughter is crying hysterically. Jin's enhanced strength, still pathetically low by hunter standards, is just enough to lift the concrete beam, pinning them down. "Run!" Jin shouts, helping the father support his wife as they flee toward a nearby evacuation shelter. The little girl looks back at Jin with wide eyes, and for just a moment, he feels like an actual hero instead of a fraud pretending to be brave. The monster, meanwhile, has recovered from its confusion and is now absolutely furious. It charges toward the fleeing family with murder in its eyes, and Jin realizes he's out of clever tricks. His stats have improved dramatically over the past few minutes, but he's still nowhere near strong enough to actually fight this thing head-on. That's when Jin discovers another aspect of his power that the system hadn't mentioned. As his desperation peaks, as he pushes his body beyond what should be physically possible in a last-ditch effort to intercept the monster, something extraordinary happens. His multiplier doesn't just double, it triples, then quadruples, climbing higher with each surge of determination. Critical situation detected. Temporary amplification, times 10. Duration, 30 seconds. Jin's eyes go wide as he feels power flooding through his body like liquid lightning. His muscles expand, his reflexes sharpen to supernatural levels, and suddenly the world seems to slow down around him. Jin moves faster than humanly possible, intercepting the monster just before it reaches the family. This time, when he punches the creature, his fist doesn't just bounce off its hide. The impact sends shockwaves through its enduring body, cracking bones and agonized roar that echoes through the burning streets. The monster staggers backward, confusion replacing rage as it realizes this pathetic human somehow just hurt it. Jin doesn't waste the opportunity. With his temporary power boost, he launches into a devastating combination of strikes, each hit adding massive amounts to his base stats while dealing real damage to his opponent. But 30 seconds isn't very long, and Jin can feel the boost beginning to fade. The monster, wounded but far from defeated, prepares for another assault. Jin's enhanced stats are still climbing, but without the temporary amplification, he's back to being dangerously outmatched. That's when the cavalry arrives in the form of a B-rank hunter team that's been systematically clearing monsters from this sector of the city. They take one look at the scene, see Jin somehow holding his own against a C-rank monster, and immediately jump to the wrong conclusion. "Holy shit, there's an unregistered hunter here," shouts the team leader, a woman whose entire body seems to be made of crackling electricity. How did the association miss someone this strong? Or Jin wants to explain that he's not actually strong, he doesn't really understand it himself. But before he can say anything, the electric, that his power is weird and complicated, and Hunter launches a devastating attack that turns the monster into barbecue. The battle is over, the family is safe, and Jin is left standing in the smoking ruins, wondering how his life became this insane in the span of a single day. The hunter team surrounds him, their faces mixing admiration and suspicion. Jin's clothes are torn, his body is covered in cuts and bruises, but he's alive, and he just helped save civilians. To them, he looks like exactly what they expect a newly awakened hunter to look like after their first real combat experience. "What's your name?" the team leader asks, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "And why isn't there any record of your awakening in the association database?" Jin's mind races as he tries to figure out how to answer without revealing the truth about his power. He can't exactly explain that he found an ancient alien computer that rewrote his DNA and turned him into a walking experience point farm. That sounds insane even by the standards of a world where people regularly shoot fire from their hands. "I'm Jin Wusung," he says carefully, "and I think I might have just awakened during the fight." Everything's still pretty confusing. It's not technically a lie, which makes Jin feel slightly better about deceiving people who just helped save the city. His power did activate today, and he is definitely confused about most of what's happening to him. The hunter team accepts his explanation with the weary nod of people who've seen stranger things during dungeon breaks. Combat awakening, the electric hunter mutters, making notes on a tablet that somehow survived the chaos. Rare, but not unheard of. The association will want to test you properly, but based on what we just saw, you're looking at C rank minimum, possibly B rank depending on your growth potential. Jin nods along while internally screaming. He's about to be dragged into the official hunter system, complete with testing, registration, and constant monitoring. His plan to quietly build strength in private has just been completely destroyed by his own heroic impulses. But as Jin looks around at the destruction, at the family he helped save, and the other civilians who are slowly emerging from their hiding places, he realizes that maybe keeping his power secret was never really an option. The world is full of monsters and disasters, and people with the ability to help have a responsibility to use it. The system window flickers in front of his eyes, showing his dramatically improved stats, and a new message that makes his heart skip. Combat experience gained, new abilities unlocked, strength amplification evolution available. Continue growing to unlock advanced features. Jin stares at the message, realizing that his power is apparently just getting started. If this is what he can accomplish after a single fight, what will he be capable of after a week of training, a month, a year? The hunter team is already discussing logistics, talking about emergency registration and temporary permits while they wait for association officials to arrive. Jin half listens while studying his status screen, trying to understand exactly what he's become and what he's supposed to do with abilities that seem to grow stronger every time he uses them. One thing is becoming very clear. His days of being weak and invisible are officially over. Whether he likes it or not, Jin Woo-sung is about to become a very important person in a world that treats power as the ultimate currency. The hunter team escorts Jin through the devastated streets toward an emergency command post that's been hastily established in what used to be a shopping mall. As they walk, Jin can't help but notice how differently people look at him now. Instead of the usual dismissive glances or outright invisibility he's grown accustomed to, civilians and rescue workers alike are staring at him with something resembling respect. It's a strange feeling, being acknowledged as someone who matters. Jin catches a front window and barely recognizes himself, his reflection in a broken store. His posture is straighter, his movements more confident, and there's something in his eyes that wasn't there this morning. He's still the same pathetic college student who couldn't open a pickle jar, but somehow he's also becoming something entirely different. The command post buzzes with activity as hunter teams report in from various sectors of the city. Jin watches seasoned professionals coordinate disaster response with military precision, their casual displays of supernatural ability making his own recent victory feel insignificant by comparison. These people have been living with powers for years, perfecting their techniques through countless battles against increasingly dangerous monsters. "Don't look so intimidated," the electric hunter says, noticing his expression. "Everyone starts somewhere. I remember my first real fight against a C-rank monster. Spent 3 hours hiding in a dumpster, before finally working up the courage to help." She extends a hand that crackles with a residual energy. Name's Park Soyeon, by the way. Team leader for Lightning Squad, which I know sounds like something a 12-year-old would come up with, but the association loves their dramatic naming conventions. Jin shakes her hand carefully, noting how his enhanced senses can actually detect the electrical current running through her skin. A week ago, that handshake would have been painful. Now it just feels tingly, like static electricity from a wool sweater. Another reminder that his body is changing in ways he's only beginning to understand. Lightning Squad actually sounds pretty cool, Jin admits, and Soyeon grins like he's just made her day. "See? I told the guys it had the right amount of intimidation factor." She gestures toward her teammates, a diverse group that includes a man whose arms are covered in stone-like armor and a woman who seems to be partially invisible around the edges. That's Rockslide and Phantom because apparently we're all committed to the superhero aesthetic. The casual nature of their conversation helps Jin relax slightly, but he's acutely aware that every moment spent talking is a moment he's not actively training his new abilities. His system window continues to display small stat gains from walking, breathing, and even social interaction, but the improvements are minimal compared to what he experienced during actual combat. This creates an interesting dilemma. Jin's power seems to scale based on the intensity of whatever he's doing, which means the most efficient way to grow stronger is to constantly seek out increasingly dangerous situations. For someone who spent most of his life avoiding any form of conflict, this represents a fundamental shift in how he needs to approach existence itself. The association officials arrive exactly as Soyeon predicted, a trio of serious-looking individuals in expensive suits who radiate the kind of bureaucratic authority that makes normal people nervous. Jin finds himself surprisingly calm as they approach, his enhanced confidence apparently extending to dealing with government representatives. Mr. Jin Woo-sung, the lead official says, consulting a tablet while managing to look both bored and suspicious simultaneously. I'm Director Kim from the Hunter Registration Division. We need to discuss your rather dramatic awakening and what it means for your future classification within the association structure. Jin nods politely, while internally noting that even this conversation is somehow generating tiny amounts of mental resilience points. His power system apparently considers bureaucratic interactions a form of endurance training, which might be the most accurate assessment of government paperwork he's ever encountered. Director Kim explains the standard procedure for newly awakened individuals, which involves extensive testing to determine power levels, ability classifications, and appropriate placement within the hunter hierarchy. The process typically takes several weeks and includes both physical examinations and practical combat assessments against controlled monster encounters. However, Director Kim continues, his expression shifting slightly, your awakening occurred during active combat against a confirmed C-rank threat, with multiple witnesses attesting to your effectiveness in both direct confrontation and civilian protection. This suggests a higher initial power level than most new hunters, which means we'll need to expedite your evaluation. Jin tries to look appropriately honoured by this special attention, while privately panicking about what expedited evaluation might involve. If the association subjects him to intensive testing, they might discover that his abilities don't follow normal patterns. Worse, they might realise that his power continues to grow at an unprecedented rate, which could lead to questions he definitely can't answer. The system window flickers with a new notification. Stress response detected. Mental fortitude increased. New skill unlocked. Deception resistance. Effectiveness of lies and misdirection against user reduced by 20%. Jin blinks in surprise, realizing that his power is apparently helping him handle this exact situation by making him naturally better at maintaining his cover story. I understand the need for proper classification, Jin says, his voice carrying a steadiness that surprises him. I want to contribute to society and help protect people, but I'm still trying to understand my own abilities. Everything happened so fast during the fight that I'm not even sure what I'm capable of. This is completely true, which makes it much easier to say convincingly. Jin genuinely has no idea what the upper limits of his power might be, and he's definitely still figuring out how his various abilities work together. The fact that these truths support his cover story feels like a minor miracle. Director Kim seems satisfied with this response, making additional notes while explaining the preliminary testing schedule. Jin will need to report to the association headquarters tomorrow morning for basic physical assessments, followed by controlled combat scenarios later in the week. The timeline gives him roughly 18 hours to figure out how to demonstrate consistent abilities without revealing the true nature of his power system. As the officials wrap up their paperwork and prepare to leave, Soyeon pulls Jin aside with the conspiratorial air of someone sharing insider knowledge. "Word of advice," she says quietly. "Don't try to impress them too much during the initial tests. The association has a habit of assigning newly awakened hunters to dangerous missions if they think you can handle it. And trust me when I say you want time to properly develop your abilities before they start throwing you at B-rank monsters." Jin nods gratefully, filing this information away for future reference. It's exactly the kind of practical guidance he needs, and it reinforces his instinct to keep the true extent of his power hidden until he better understands what he's dealing with. The next few hours pass in a blur of paperwork, medical examinations, and temporary certifications that allow Jin to legally exist as an unregistered hunter until his formal evaluation is complete. By the time he finally makes it back to his tiny apartment, the sun is setting and his body is exhausted from the most eventful day of his life. Jin collapses onto his bed and pulls up his status screen, studying the dramatic improvements that a single day of crisis has produced. His strength has increased by 15 points, his agility by 12, his endurance by 18, and several new stats have appeared, including things like combat instinct and crisis management. Most remarkably, his base multiplier has permanently increased from 1 times to 1.2 times, meaning all future gains will be 20% more effective. The implications are staggering. If Jin can maintain this rate of growth, he'll surpass most professional hunters within a matter of weeks rather than years. But the system window also displays several warnings about reality distortion and dimensional stability concerns that suggest there might be consequences to unlimited power accumulation that he hasn't considered. Jin spends the next hour experimenting with different exercises in his apartment, documenting how various activities affect his stat gains, and trying to develop a training routine that maximizes growth without attracting attention from his neighbors. Push-ups and sit-ups provide steady strength and endurance increases, while practicing balance and coordination exercises boosts his agility and reflexes. More interestingly, Jin discovers that mental activities also contribute to his development. Reading complex texts increases his intelligence and focus stats, while problem-solving exercises boost his analytical thinking and pattern recognition abilities. Even meditation provides benefits, improving his mental resilience and emotional stability. This means Jin can literally become a more complete person through the simple act of living intentionally. Every aspect of self-improvement, from physical fitness to intellectual development, is now directly translated into measurable power increases that compound over time. As Jin lies in bed that night, staring at the ceiling while his enhanced senses pick up sounds from neighbouring apartments that he never noticed before, he realises that his life has fundamentally changed in ways that go far beyond just becoming stronger. He's no longer the same person who woke up this morning, and tomorrow will bring changes that he can't even imagine yet. The system window flickers one final time before he falls asleep. Daily growth summary complete. Total stat gains, 47 points across all categories. Projected strength increase over next 7 days, approximately 300%. Warning: rapid development may attract unwanted attention from entities beyond current understanding. Jin closes his eyes and tries not to think about what entities beyond current understanding might mean. He has enough immediate problems to worry about, starting with tomorrow's association testing and the growing suspicion that his power might be connected to something much larger and more dangerous than a simple awakening event. But for now, he's stronger than he was this morning. He helped save lives during a citywide crisis, and he's finally moving forward instead of just surviving. Whatever challenges tomorrow brings, Jin Woo-sung is no longer the helpless college student who couldn't open a pickle jar. He's becoming something else entirely, and the world better be ready for it. Jin wakes up the next morning with muscles that feel like they've been rebuilt from scratch. The soreness isn't painful. It's almost pleasant, like his body is celebrating its transformation. He stretches in bed and immediately notices the system window, tracking even these basic movements, adding tiny increments to his flexibility and morning recovery stats. The association headquarters looms like a glass and steel monument to supernatural bureaucracy. Jin arrives 30 minutes early, partly from nerves and partly because his enhanced endurance made the walk feel effortless. The building buzzes with activity as hunters of every rank come and go, their casual displays of power making the air itself feel charged with potential energy. Director Kim greets Jin with the enthusiasm of someone processing their 50th application of the week. The initial tests are surprisingly mundane: basic physical measurements, reflex assessments, and strength evaluations using equipment that looks like it belongs in a high-tech gym rather than a government facility. Jin carefully moderates his performance, demonstrating abilities that are impressive for a newly awakened hunter, without revealing the true extent of his rapidly developing powers. When they ask him to punch a measurement device, he holds back significantly, producing readings that suggest solid C-rank potential rather than the monster-level strength he's actually developing. The combat assessment takes place in a controlled environment with holographic monsters that react like the real thing but can't actually cause permanent damage. Jin faces off against a simulated goblin, then an orc, methodically demonstrating basic combat competence, while his system quietly rewards every dodge, strike, and tactical decision with stat improvements. What the evaluators don't realize is that Jin is essentially farming experience points during his own examination. Every practice round makes him measurably stronger, meaning that by the end of the testing session, he's already outgrown the abilities he demonstrated at the beginning. The final assessment involves a psychological evaluation designed to determine whether new hunters can handle the mental stress of monster combat. Jin finds himself answering questions about fear, responsibility, and moral decision-making, while his system tracks improvements to his wisdom, emotional intelligence, and leadership potential stats. Director Kim reviews the results with the expression of someone trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. Jin's scores are consistent with a strong C-rank hunter with potential for B-rank advancement, exactly the profile he was hoping to project. But there's something in the director's eyes that suggests he suspects there's more to the story. "Congratulations, Mr. Jin," Director Kim says, stamping official documents with theatrical authority. "You're now a registered C-rank hunter with provisional status for independent monster suppression activities. Your official hunter license will be ready within 48 hours. Tor." Jin accepts the temporary credentials with appropriate gratitude, while privately calculating how much stronger he'll be by the time his permanent license arrives. If his current growth rate continues, he might need to start failing some missions just to avoid suspicion about his rapid advancement. The next few days establish Jin's new routine: morning training in his apartment, afternoon missions clearing low-level dungeons, evening experimentation with his abilities, and nights spent studying monster behavior patterns and hunter combat techniques. Every aspect of this schedule contributes to his development in measurable ways. His first official mission involves clearing a D-rank dungeon that's spawning slimes in an abandoned subway tunnel. Jin approaches the assignment with the seriousness of someone facing mortal danger, which amuses his more experienced partner, until they realize he's not joking about treating every encounter as a learning opportunity. The slimes are pathetically weak by any reasonable standard, but Jin treats each one like a worthy opponent, practicing different combat techniques and experimenting with tactical approaches that maximize his stat gains. His partner, a veteran hunter named Lee Jinho, initially thinks Jin is showing off, then becomes concerned that he might be mentally unstable. "You know these things can barely hurt you, right?" Jinho asks as Jin carefully studies a slime's movement patterns before delivering a precisely calculated strike. Most C-rank hunters can clear this entire dungeon in about 10 minutes. Jin nods seriously, while his system rewards his analytical approach with improvements to his tactical thinking and monster knowledge stats. I want to make sure I understand the fundamentals before moving on to stronger opponents. Every fight teaches you something if you pay attention. Kirawahins. This philosophy extends to every aspect of Jin's new career. He volunteers for missions that other hunters consider beneath their dignity, spending hours in low-level dungeons that provide steady streams of combat experience and stat improvements. His colleagues begin to view him as either incredibly dedicated or slightly obsessive, but his results speak for themselves. Within a week, Jin is clearing dungeons faster than hunters with years of experience. His movements are more efficient, his tactical decisions more sound, and his overall combat effectiveness continues to improve at a rate that defies conventional understanding of skill development. The system rewards this comprehensive approach by unlocking new features that make Jin's power even more broken. He gains access to skill trees that allow him to specialize his stat growth, focusing improvements in specific areas like speed, strength, or magical resistance depending on what challenges he's currently facing. More remarkably, Jin discovers that his power system can analyze and adapt to different types of supernatural abilities. After fighting alongside hunters who use elemental magic, he begins developing resistance to fire, ice, and lightning attacks. Exposure to psychic abilities grants him mental shields that protect against mind control and illusion effects. This adaptive capability means that Jin doesn't just get stronger over time, he becomes increasingly versatile and well-rounded. Every new experience adds to his arsenal of abilities, creating a feedback loop where facing diverse challenges makes him better equipped to handle even more diverse challenges in the future. Jin's reputation within the association begins to shift as word spreads about his unusual dedication and consistently impressive results. Senior hunters start requesting him for team missions, not because he's the strongest member, but because his presence somehow makes entire groups more effective at completing objectives. What they don't realize is that Jin's system has unlocked group synergy bonuses that improve the performance of anyone fighting alongside him. His mere presence boosts team coordination, tactical awareness, and overall combat effectiveness. Jin is literally becoming a force multiplier that makes everyone around him better at their jobs. This development attracts attention from association leadership, who begin tracking Jin's career progression with growing interest. His advancement rate is unprecedented for someone without family connections or elite academy training, suggesting either exceptional natural talent or access to resources that haven't been properly documented. Director Kim schedules a meeting to discuss Jin's future within the association hierarchy. The conversation is friendly but probing, with questions about his training methods, personal background, and long-term career goals. Jin navigates the discussion carefully, providing answers that are truthful without revealing the supernatural nature of his development. "Your progress has been remarkable," Director Kim observes, reviewing files that document Jin's string of successful missions. Most hunters require months or years to demonstrate this level of improvement. Have you considered applying for accelerated advancement to B-rank status? Jin's heart skips as he realizes that his careful moderation might not have been careful enough. If the association promotes him too quickly, he'll face stronger monsters and more scrutiny, potentially exposing abilities that he's not ready to explain. But refusing advancement might seem suspicious in its own right. "I appreciate the consideration," Jin says diplomatically, "but I feel like I still have a lot to learn at the C-rank level. I'd prefer to build a solid foundation before taking on greater responsibilities." Director Kim nods approvingly, making notes that suggest Jin's cautious approach demonstrates wisdom and maturity. This response apparently raises his standing even further, painting him as a hunter who prioritizes competence over ego. a refreshingly rare trait in a profession that attracts glory seekers and power-hungry individuals. The meeting concludes with Director Kim offering Jin access to specialized training programs and advanced equipment that could accelerate his development even further. Jin accepts these opportunities gratefully, while privately wondering how he's going to manage exponential growth without breaking the entire power system that governs hunter society. That evening, Jin experiments with his new equipment in a private training facility, discovering that enhanced weapons and armor don't just improve his combat effectiveness, they actually provide additional stat bonuses that stack with his natural growth. A simple reinforced sword grants him permanent increases to precision and weapon mastery, while protective gear boosts his durability and damage resistance. The implications are terrifying from a game balance perspective. Jin isn't just getting stronger through training and combat experience, he's also benefiting from equipment bonuses that compound his natural advantages. If he can gain access to truly high-level gear, his power growth might become completely unstoppable. Jin's system displays a new warning message that night. Exponential growth detected. Reality stability decreasing. Recommend implementing growth limitations to prevent dimensional cascade failure. The message is accompanied by technical readouts that Jin doesn't understand, but the tone suggests that his power might be approaching levels that could have unintended consequences